Hi, everybody, and welcome. Nice pass you just made right here. Perfect. And with Craig Furstenau. I'm Ken Daniels, the Detroit Red Wings. Craig, I want to know first off a little bit about you from your days growing up in the Detroit area playing hockey. How has it changed with kids growing up today?
Well, I grew up in Grosse Ile, downriver Michigan. Had two hardworking parents, and we actually didn't play any hockey in the summertime. So hockey, 20 years ago was a lot different. We played September until March. We put the skates away. We played golf. We played baseball. Nowadays, you see kids playing year-round, and you definitely see a trend where kids are putting more into their craft in whatever sport that is that they pursue. But there's a huge influx with how often these kids are training and what they're doing in the summertime.
Well, on that point, how often should they be training? Because I remember Wayne Gretzky, and you just said it too, you put it away in the summertime. Wayne always said he played tennis all summer. He never was on skates during the summertime.
That's a great question. I'm in the business actually to train hockey players, and when parents ask me how often they skate, I actually say 1 hour a week in the summer, maybe two. Don't go crazy with it. I know there's a lot of people that want to go in from one camp to another camp to another camp all summer long, and actually I think the opposite. I think there's a lot to be said for having some maintenance where a kid can get on the ice for 1 hour and then go outside and swim and play with his friends, and he'll still benefit from the skill development that he's going to get in that 1 hour if it's done correctly. And he's not going to get burned out, or he or she will not get burned out because they're going to actually have the opportunity to be a kid.
So what makes your camp different from many other camps that are around?
I take a lot of pride in offering value. Looking back at my childhood as a hockey player, my parents spent an awful lot of money. I have two brothers. My sister was an athlete, but I had two brothers that played hockey, and I was the youngest of four. And you're talking about coming up in the 80s and 90s, how expensive hockey was then, and now going to 2018, I have some kids that I coach or train now that have three brothers and sisters, and you can spend $2,000 a month during the season just in hockey. And when I realize how expensive the sport is, the one thing that I don't want to do is have parents who want their kids to have confidence in the sport. I don't want them to think that they have to refinance their house in order to pay for training. You see a lot of kids who aren't able to play AAA hockey because of how expensive it is. I was that kid growing up. I never played AAA hockey because I knew it was a huge financial burden for my mom and dad. And now that I'm coaching AAA hockey, I realize the financial burden that it entails on these families. So when you take into the training side of it in the summer, I don't want to be another financial burden to anybody, but I want to be able to charge a rate where I can draw the most amount of kids, but not sacrifice the quality that I'm giving the families.
So you last played competitively in around 2000, right?
Yep.
So how do you then adapt the days then? A lot of time has passed since 2000 that you're qualified today to teach kids of today's hockey, I guess.
Well, my wife would probably tell you it's because my maturity hasn't changed in the last 20 years, but and she might be right. But for me, it's to the point we talked about earlier. It's the passion for the game. I still, at 40, am just as much of a student of the game as I was when I was 7, 8 years old. Now with today's technology, with Instagram, I can follow trainers in Europe and see some of the things that they're doing with their students. And I'll pick up on it, but I ask a lot of questions. With anybody I'm around, especially NHL guys, I'll ask them.
I love that. That's important.
I ask a lot of questions. But again, I spend a lot of time studying and researching and looking at different ways to get something new, or maybe you're teaching a concept that's been around for for hundreds of years. Like skating is skating, and a wrist shot's still a wrist shot, and that hasn't changed. But I try to figure out different ways to get the kids challenged and to get the result that I'm looking for. But it's definitely through a lot of research. It's definitely through a lot of following on Instagram or YouTube or whatever the case may be, because now the technology and the resources are there where you can look at some guy that's running a hockey camp in Russia, and even though I can't understand what he's saying, I can look at the videos and I know the concept that he's trying to distribute or how he's trying to get that out in his kids. So I've definitely gotten a lot out of that. Anytime hockey's on TV, I'm watching and I'm listening to the analysts and what they're saying, and because they're teaching you all along, they're telling you, and it doesn't matter if it's a player that retired 25 years ago, he's identifying the different nuances in today's game. And guys now are so much better and so much faster and so much stronger than we were 20 years ago. And it's still the passion to constantly stay on top of today's game with the technology of the skates, with the technology of the sticks. There's more success now at the younger ages than there probably was years ago. So I still try to study as much as I possibly can so that I'm prepared to work with these kids.
We always hear about parents in minor hockey, and you talk about that time you have with the kids. How much time do you actually get to spend with the parents, who I'm sure have their input, don't they? Or would like to.
They do. Well, it's different. Coaching and training are two totally different worlds. When we do this training here, almost to the point where the parents sort of let them go to the rink and work on their craft for the hour or two that they're there. And what I try to do is follow up with the parents and give them feedback of how the player is progressing. As a coach, it's a totally different realm of communication with parents, and I won't comment on which one I like better, but they're totally two different avenues for sure.
How did you get into coaching?
Coaching was something I thought I wanted to do when I was in high school. I knew that I was going to pursue hockey at some point. Whether or not I could ever make a profession out of it, I didn't know the answer to that. But when I had graduated from high school, I volunteered with Grosse Ile High School. They had started a varsity program. So 2 years after I graduated, I volunteered and helped out, which was great. And I thought that would probably be the end of the road for me, is just to kind of do that. And then I went on to play, weird story. I went on to play hockey at Oakland University after that, or around that same time frame, and it was an injury that got me into coaching. So I started to pursue coaching and sort of followed my heart with that, where I realized that coaching was what I wanted to do. I remember having a conversation with Glenn Murray just before the 2008 Stanley Cup run, and we were sitting down at Joe Louis Arena watching the Red Wings practice. And he had asked me, he's like, Craig, you don't make a whole lot of money in coaching. And he's like, I'll never forget it, because he said, coaching is a tough way to make a living. And I said, you know what, I realize that, but I think I'd rather make substantially less money doing something I love to do than to sit in an office making twice as much money or 3 times as much money. So coaching is something I want to pursue. And I've always tried to do that, like where, there was a time in my life where I had to work during the day to basically offset my coaching at night. And that's really how it was. And there was a little glitch there. In 2011, I had coached a team out in Wyoming, and when I came back, I'd already had about 7 or 8 years of coaching. I don't remember how many years, but I had some years of coaching, and there was a point where I thought, maybe I'm just destined to work in an office. I thought all along, it's hard, it's a tough way to make it work. And my wife now, and at the time she wasn't my wife, she said, Craig, you are not meant to sit in a desk. You're not meant to sit in an office. So I'd actually come back from Wyoming. I had a corporate job for 3 days. And I'm losing my mind. I'm like, this isn't me. I'm like, I was training kids before, and I was coaching, and I enjoyed it. And I wasn't rich, but I was having fun. And she talked to me and said, Craig, you know what you need to do. And 3 days after I started the job, I walked into the office. I said, thanks for the opportunity, but this isn't for me. And I walked out. I haven't looked back, and I've gotten into coaching and training really full-time ever since.
Well, it's the same in my business too, and I tell kids all the time, it's about passion. And if you have a passion for something, you'll do it. There's passion, there's persistence, it's the perseverance. It's the perspiration. It's everything you put in it. All those P's come into play. And if you live by it, I live by it, and that comes through to those that you're working with.
Absolutely. And I know it's not coaching the Detroit Red Wings or the NHL. I realize the likelihood of that happening, but I found so much value in working with today's athletes. And I guess really for me is I find a lot of satisfaction. It's not about a dollar amount, because obviously, as I said, I'm not going to get rich doing what I'm doing, but there's so much to be said for knowing that you had an impact on that player's life.
So that's the end game, right?
That is the end game for me. I guess, as a coach, I've been pretty blessed because I've helped kids move on to real high levels in hockey. And there's a lot of satisfaction in seeing a kid reach the NHL or reach college hockey or play for the national development team or whatever the case may be. But it's so nice when along the way, you're helping a kid and you're mentoring a kid, and years later, they send you an email or a text or a phone call, and they follow up with you and say, Craig, you have no idea what you did for me, or you gave me confidence that translated into something bigger than hockey, or I was thinking about quitting hockey, but you spent some time and you gave me a little bit of confidence, and I was able to pursue it longer. That is awesome.
So if you're thinking quitting at one time and you have the confidence or to keep going and keep doing it, so what's left for you to accomplish?
There's still a part of me that wants to get to the NHL. Years ago, 2008, when I was with the Little Caesars organization, there was some talk about me replacing the video coach. At the time was Jay Woodcroft, and Mike Babcock I sat on a plane with Babcock on the way to Minnesota, which is the year I met you. And he asked me a lot of questions, and one of the questions was, Craig, are you a college graduate? Because he was big on education. Babcock said, I'm not going to hire anybody to replace Woodcroft unless they're college educated. And to that point, I actually had stepped away from my college degree years ago because I got into coaching and I was having success at coaching, so I stepped away from college. When I thought I was going to be a lawyer and when I got into coaching, I realized that hockey was the avenue I wanted to pursue and it wasn't law school. So I stopped going to school for a number of years, but I had also made a promise to my mom and dad that I would complete my degree. And so when Mike Babcock said, I want a college graduate, and I had also had a promise to my parents, I went back to school 8.5 years in after not taking my classes.
Yeah. I
completed my degree to number one, fulfill a promise to my mom and dad. And I knew that if I ever wanted to pursue coaching, whether it was a collegiate level or in that case, Mike Babcock, I had to have a degree. So I did finish it. Babcock brought me down into Detroit in the locker room just before the Stanley Cup run, and I shadowed Woodcroft. They ended up hiring somebody that had college experience doing the video work from Michigan State, which I understood, but it also launched me to the Toledo Walleye, which was a Red Wing affiliate, where I became the video coach there for 1 year. So there's a part of me that really, that was what I wanted. As a kid growing up in Detroit, every kid wants to be a Red Wing. Every kid that played hockey wants to wear the red and white sweater, and obviously now I'll be 40. My playing days are long since gone. If I'm ever going to work in an organization like that, it's probably not going to be as a player, obviously. So, aside from the training, it would be great to get into coaching to make it to the NHL, because that seems to be the one thing that was left undone is the NHL. But everything else, I've been pretty blessed.
Well, that's okay. You're still young enough to get there. We'll finish up with this thought when you talk maybe coaching is the end game. Not necessarily in your mind, but maybe it happens that way. But right now, in what you're doing, what are your strengths as a trainer? If I'm a parent coming to you, what do you tell me on why you're going to make my son or daughter better?
That's an awesome question. For me, number one, it goes back to what I said earlier about the camp versus the small group setting. And I am a huge proponent of that. I want to provide value for every kid that comes out onto the ice with me or my staff. So, while I could make a heck of a lot more money if I had 30 kids on the ice, that's not what I want. But having that small group setting, I'm going to be able to provide a lot more repetitions for the son or daughter. And because it's a small setting, I can actually critique what they're doing right and wrong. And I see so many instructors in the Detroit area that might teach a good skill or they might have a good drill, but they're not actually identifying the weakness in the first place. So therefore, some kid's going through and he's just doing something wrong over and over and over again, and all he's doing is reinforcing a bad habit. So for me, I like to actually spend time with each individual player and take them aside when they're not shooting off the right foot, or if their weight transfer isn't where it needs to be, or if their stride isn't as efficient as it could be. And I've really developed a knack for being able to identify those weaknesses, whether it's from a skating perspective, a balance perspective, or the way they handle the puck, way they shoot. I take pride in actually critiquing and coaching and providing encouragement, obviously, where needed, but to actually identify what they're doing wrong so that they don't reinforce that habit. The last thing I want is for someone to pay me and not get anything out of it. It just doesn't work. And I put too much pride in my name and knowing that when someone gives me, $40 or $50 or $100, whatever that number is, that they're going to get something in return. Not just let them go do drills and do it wrong.
Well, I know you critique because I read your text in intermission and you're critiquing the Red Wings as they play, so I know all about it. Thanks for doing this. Continued success. I know you're terrific. I've seen you in action, so keep her going.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.